Hi everyone, I'm Nathan with the ebookreader.com. For this video, I've got the Pocketbook InkPad Color and the Onyx 3 Nova Color. So they have the same 7.8 inch color e-ink screen, but as you can see, I find it interesting that it actually looks better on the Nova screen on the right. But we'll get back to that in a second. Let's look at the hardware a little bit. So the Nova has a flush front screen. It's got a single back button below the screen. Smudge prone back. You got a speaker on the back as well. Power buttons up top, and then the InkPad. It's got the buttons below the screen for paging and menu and home, and then it's got the indented screen, so it doesn't have that flush layer like the Nova. And then on the bottom, it adds a micro SD card slot. Both have USB-C ports, and then on the back, it's just got kind of like rounded edges. So I do like the design of the Pocketbook. It's nice and comfortable to hold. The Onyx is a little bit more tablet-like, a little bit heavier with that glass screen. It also has a Wacom touchscreen and comes with the stylus, so it adds a lot more functionality. It's a full-fledged notepad as well, where the Pocketbook's more of a dedicated e-reader. So let's get back to this comic here I loaded up. I just wanted to compare the page turns initially because the Pocketbook, it's really slow to turn pages. As you can see here, the Onyx is much faster. And what I saw that is even more interesting is the color is completely different on these two devices. They have the exact same ink screen, the new Kaleido Plus screen. So I find it interesting that, the screens look so completely different as you can see here. So yeah, the Pocketbook a little bit slow to respond here. We got to get back a couple of pages. So we get the same page here. Yeah, totally different colors on these two. So one thing about the Onyx is it has this color control in here where you can control the contrast and the color saturation. So I had those cranked up a bit, and that was like the reason for the completely different color. But even when you turn it down, you can see here, so now it looks like the Pocketbook has better color, especially on that lower frame. Definitely a lot more orange in the background of that. So I think it's really interesting that you can actually control this with the Onyx device. So Pocketbook doesn't have any kind of contrast control with their reader. So if you go too high on the contrast, it just makes the image too dark. So let's just keep that down for this comparison. I got the saturation halfway up. So, and I'm not exactly sure what brightness does, but when you combine it with color saturation, it gets really, yeah, you can definitely see how much brighter it is right now than it was by default. So let's load up a different comic here just to compare. So like again, takes a lot longer to load stuff on the Pocketbook than does the Onyx. Onyx is very quick with that octa-core processor. Pocketbook has a single core, dual core, or a single gigahertz dual core processor. So like this page is a little bit interesting. Like on the Pocketbook, it almost looks like the color's better. Look at the background of the blue here. So it's a little bit darker. Another thing with the Onyx is it doesn't have the best refresh. So you have to kind of refresh. It has a lot of ghosting. I actually have it set up to minimize ghosting. You still get quite a bit of ghosting. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting how different the colors are on these two devices. Look at this, completely different color when you're using Onyx's, customizable contrast or color saturation settings. So yeah, I find it very interesting that how different these two screens look, even though they have the same screen. So like I was saying with the Onyx, the refreshing algorithm isn't nearly as good. Pocketbook basically refreshes the full screen all the time. I don't have any ghosting problems on the Pocketbook, so I got a lot more ghosting problems on the Onyx. You got to go in here and set it to do a deep refresh every page if you don't want to see parts of the previous page. So you can clearly see parts of the previous page on the Onyx right now because I just set it to like a regular refresh mode instead of the full deep refresh mode. So that's one thing that Pocketbook definitely has an advantage on. There's hardly any ghosting, like with the menus or anything. Like Onyx always has ghosting when you close a menu. So yeah, the refresh is definitely better on the Pocketbook. Color is definitely better on the Onyx though. So, and speed by a long shot. So I just find it interesting how these two devices with the same screen can perform so differently. Another thing I noticed is like the text balloons with the Onyx. See how much darker the text is? They have more of a contrast control. They do this on their system-wide like contrast control where like the text is a bit darker. Yeah, it does translate well to this though because it does make it easier to read on these text balloons. So like with the Pocketbook, you don't have control over that kind of stuff. So let's talk about the text. Here's sort of a similar layout with the text here. I also noticed the text looks darker on the Onyx than it does on the Pocketbook when you're using just a regular ebook. We got the front light turned off right here, so it's kind of an even playing ground. And the Onyx, yeah, text is clearly darker on the Onyx. But again, Onyx has a lot more control over this. So they have like a couple of different options in the settings. They have a boldness option. You control the contrast separately from boldness. Whereas the Pocketbook, it just has a boldness option. So when you go bold, I kind of find that it's just too thick. But it definitely does sort of even the playing field a little bit when you go this way. So back to regular. with the Onyx having no boldness enabled. So yeah, it still looks clearly better on the Onyx. And here again with the front light. Front light's a little bit different color on the Onyx. I say it's a little more neutral on the Pocketbook. Front lights vary so much from one to the next, though. I wouldn't take this as any kind of definitive statement at all. But again, like with the Onyx, you got Android operating system, and it's got the built-in note app, so it's a lot more advanced. It's got the Wacom touchscreen with pressure-sensitive pen that it comes with. You got like a full-fledged note app in here with like AI recognition and all this stuff. So it's got a lot more advanced features. You may not need that for a reading device, and Pocketbook, it doesn't offer this kind of thing right here where you can have a separate note app. But I mean, you can write on the page like using your finger, or if you had I tried it with a capacitive stylus, it didn't work very well. You had to press down really hard. I mean, so it's a little big difference compared to a Wacom touchscreen. But so again, like with the Onyx, you got all this options with Android apps, which is a huge deal when it comes to color content, because you can easily get color content through Android apps. A little bit harder on the Pocketbook. You can install a few apps on there. It's Linux based. They have a few different reading apps you can install on this. Someone told me that you can install a reading or a viewer app, image viewer app, that will make the comics a lot faster. So there is some options for Pocketbook. But again, with the Onyx's Android operating system, you have Google Play. So you got a lot more features with that. But I do really like the Pocketbook's design with the page buttons. And having a memory card slot's a big deal for some folks. But, you know, when it comes down to performance and features, the Onyx kind of blows the Pocketbook out of the water, quite frankly. But, you know, I mean, it just kind of comes down to what you're looking for in a reading device. The Pocketbook is like $90 cheaper than the Onyx, which is significant. So, I mean, it can get the job done if you wanted a color e-reader. But again, with the Onyx having the contrast control, you can control the color a little bit better and definitely a lot faster. So, you know, got a lot more features with it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Thank you guys for watching. I just wanted to show you the differences between these two devices, kind of in a quick comparison review. Check out the main reviews if you'd like to see a little bit more in depth for these devices. Thank you guys for watching. Goodbye.